no, Wednesday. I've lost a day already. 17th of September. So just to start with, apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Choi Monkonge and also from Councillor Lubna Arshad, who is potentially going to be a bit late to the meeting. So we will start without her. Next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of interest they need to make? No. Okay. We then have the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of August. Are people happy to agree those as an accurate record? Good. I'm taking that as a yes. We have no notified addresses by members of the public, nor from councillors on items for decision on the Cabinet agenda, nor on neighbourhood issues or items raised by Cabinet members. So that takes us to reports from the Scrutiny Committee. And Councillor Powell, I think I can see you online. So over to you.
Thank you very much. So the Scrutiny Committee met on the 9th of September. Firstly, to consider the Citizen and Community Engagement Policy 2025, and also to agree the scope of Budget Review Group. In addition to reporting on that meeting, I'll also be reporting on the meeting of the Housing and Homelessness Working Group on the 2nd of September and the Climate and Environment Working Group on the 3rd of September, where they considered a range of other reports. I shall start, however, with the main scrutiny meeting. So in terms of the Citizen and Community Engagement Policy, firstly, I'd like to express thanks to Councillor Chapman, to Tom Hook and to Zhao Zhao Miao for their contributions. It was a really, really good and engaged discussion, and I think a lot of positive interaction came out of it. Some points that were discussed by the committee were basically some concern around the level of response garnered on the consultation on the strategy compared to the population, as well as quite an extended discussion around what work goes into generating engagement from youth communities and other groups who are underrepresented. Questions came up around language and accessibility, as well as the role of locality managers and councillors in sort of trying to get engagement and dissemination of consultation events. There was a whole interesting part of the meeting which also reflected on things like councillors' awareness of notice boards and how councillors might be involved in consultation. And I think that was very, very productive for us to discuss, even if not directly related to matters here. So coming out of that, there were four... apologies, my screen has decided to lose my notes. There we go. So coming out of that, we had a series of recommendations. So the first recommendation, recommendation 1, was basically that we would have a greater, if I can find the right note, apologies. There we go. Recommendation 1 was that the policy should specifically assign a greater role for the locality managers in disseminating consultations. Basically, the point here was to make sure that their understanding of each area's needs could tailor the way engagement was done. The second recommendation on this report that we made was that the policy should explicitly acknowledge and identify busy time periods of the year where consultation should be avoided. This is basically intended to give people the best possible chance of engaging. Third recommendation on this item was that every consultation document should undergo an inclusivity check by an officer, resident, or elected member prior to release. Basically, just a final sign-off. This document is as inclusive and accessible as it could be. Then we have fourth, that the Cabinet should ensure the policy is applied in a manner that maximises the inclusion of disabled people. And the fifth, that basically we encourage Cabinet to request officers to undertake exploratory work to incorporate a system for ranking the importance of consultations and investigating whether, for those more important ones, incentives might help to maximise engagement. So there's 5 recommendations on that item in its totality. I think it probably makes sense for me to pass back there before going on to working groups, given the number of recommendations.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Nigel, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan. Well, you can see the response to the 5 recommendations in the paperwork. We've accepted most of them. There were 2 that we had some issues with. I mean, sometimes, if I could just make a point about scrutiny, there's a bit of confusion about strategy, policy, and operationalization of things. And so the locality manager thing is much better placed in an operational plan around, using the operational that locality manager to disseminate consultation material in a given area, if that's appropriate, rather than making a generic sort of plan for them as part of the strategy. So that's why it says in part rather than in whole. And the issue, we accepted all the other ones except the issue about ranking the importance of each consultation and investigate whether these incentives could effectively increase participation engagement. I know where scrutiny were coming from, but actually it's very hard to rank them because, I mean, you're not comparing apples with apples most of the time. You have local ones, small ones, and very large citywide ones. So how do you manage to, put all that in the same league table? That's pretty difficult. And secondly, incentives could have a perverse outcome that people actually took part of the consultation because they were getting an incentive, not because they were interested in actually taking part in it. So I think that, and also there's the cost issue. So I think we do offer, I believe, small incentives for people to be members of the residents panel. I think that's the right sort of level, to be honest. I think going down to individual, glasses of wine or boxes of chocolates for those who take part in individual consultations might be getting a bit far. So we didn't really want to go down that road. But the rest of it we did accept. I think it was a useful conversation. So thank you for that.
Thanks very much, Nigel. Alex, back to you.
Thank you very much. So I'll move now to talk about the working groups. I will start with the Housing and Homelessness working group. So the Housing and Homelessness working group met on the 2nd of September. They considered and scrutiny then endorsed their recommendations regarding the reprocurement of Housing First Support Services Cabinet Report, the Temporary Accommodation Placement Policy Cabinet Report, the Housing Service Q1 Performance Report, and the Social Housing Allocations and Lettings Report. There were only 2 of those to which recommendations were made, but I shall give a brief summary of the discussions or points that they wish to emphasize. So firstly, on the Temporary Accommodation Placement Policy Report, a point of concern was raised around the 6-week period that people, particularly families or pregnant women, could be placed into temporary accommodation. And the group in discussion wanted to explore if this could be reduced, though it was understood that the 6-week limit is statutorily set. Linked to that, there was one recommendation that Cabinet seeks to ensure that temporary accommodation placement policy incorporates a degree of flexibility to take account of extraordinary employment circumstances, including those who work irregular hours or variable hours contracts. So on many of the other items, there were not recommendations put forward as such. But again, in discussion, I'm aware that the working group made some extensive consideration. That, however, was the only recommendation coming out of that meeting. Given there's only the one, I presume I might go on to do the Climate and Environment group in the interest of time, and then take responses to both, if that's okay. Thank you. So then moving to the Climate and Environment group, which met the next day on September the 3rd. Firstly, their meeting considered the heat network update. There was an extended discussion around that. It was an item that attracted real interest. And I should also say it was an item that attracted real interest when it came to scrutiny as well. As in, when we were endorsing the recommendations, there was considerable interest in this item as a site of great potential. So the item heat network update was very positively received by both the working group and by the General Scrutiny Committee. There were concerns raised around the presence of potential monopolies by private companies. There were questions raised around the potential for how disruption would be managed. And there were some questions raised around sort of the social value elements, so the role of living wage, financial arrangements, or income generation, and how that might benefit the city. This culminated in 3 recommendations. The first was that social value creation was explored and embedded in the delivery of the heat network. So basically that there should be a real focus on mitigating negative impacts of construction, including compensation for any disruptions to local businesses, safety concerns, damage to properties and other community impacts, and that any incomes generated through the network should be directed towards addressing fuel poverty. Second, it was recommended that council ensure there is further scrutiny specifically around the ownership models of the infrastructure. That point about monopolies. And thirdly, there was concern around potential monopolies should be noted, and that commercial arrangements should include mechanisms that will ensure long-term public benefit and enable public oversight, and particularly that any profits or financial turnover generated through the heat network should be shared with the city council and used to benefit residents. And obviously also where possible, infrastructure should be retained in public ownership, or at least safeguards be put in place. After this, the Climate and Environment Group also considered an item on local electric vehicle infrastructure. On this, they made one recommendation. This was that where OX Place, as a council-owned company, should ensure that EV charging points in any new developments are accessible to the wider community, and that further work is undertaken to explore the work of workplace EV charging points by local residents during evenings and weekends. Potentially, this could be done through planning conditions, they note. And finally, the working group considered the social housing allocations and lettings. Now, there were no recommendations on this, but it was subject to an extensive discussion, with some concerns raised about the mismatch between the high demand for one-bed homes and underrepresentation within current housing stock, concerns around unseen overcrowding, questions about transparency and communication regarding eligibility for individuals in Band 5, where there's very low likelihood of being housed, as well as the potential of downsizing incentive schemes. But as I say, no formal recommendations. That's just to note the discussion that took place. I think that concludes everything I have to report today.
Thanks very much, Alex. A lot of work from scrutiny. Linda, did you want to respond at all on the housing one, and then I'll go over to Anna for the other ones?
I think I'd better, yeah. Councillor Powell referred to the recommendation, which is in the papers, about temporary accommodation placement policy, which we've said, yes, we agree to that. It's calling for flexibility, and we believe that flexibility is already there within the policy, because it does consider each case on its merits on an individual basis. The second recommendation, I don't have any recollection of, and it's not in the paperwork, so I don't have a response to that.
No, I think there's only one recommendation. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you, Anna.
Yes, when it comes to the heat network discussion. Yes, it was super helpful, and I think there were 3 sensible recommendations there which we've all accepted. Certainly the monopoly point is something that central government is also sort of like trying to work through as well. When it comes to the EV, so I don't know if this is me or Alex.
That's me, actually. I think.
You? Okay, sorry. In which case,
it's because it's really basically an OX Place issue. It has a planning overtones as well. We could see where the climate and environment work group were coming from, but actually this is just not practically really possible. I mean, if you're talking about individual charging points on individual properties, if the owner of that particular property wants to make it accessible to the general public and come to some agreement, fine. But the council can't go around, mandating people to, open their EV points at certain times of the day to the public. How would they pay for it? And it's just massively complicated. So I think we've got to differentiate between communal EV charging points, which we'd like to see more in the city, and those that are part of private developments or workplace EV points, which are dedicated for a particular purpose and really can't be sort of shared easily with the wider community. I think that's the practical problem, Alex, here. It's just not really possible to do it, however laudable it might be.
Thanks very much. And as always, Alex, you're very welcome to stay and watch the rest of the meeting, or leave as you wish. But thank you very much for Scrutiny's work on the various different reports. It, as I said, seemed like a busy set of agendas. So for us too, we must crack on. So that takes us on to item 9, which is the quarterly integrated performance report Q4 for last year. And Ed, over to you and Nigel to present that. And I think we have Claire online as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So this is the first one of these couple of reports about the outturn, and it's obviously always useful, important study where things went well, where things went less well, and we'll have inevitably lessons as well for setting the budget next year. Though, of course, this relates to last year's budget. So, and you'll see that unfortunately we did need to make an additional transfer from reserves, and that was because of a couple of quite significant pressures. I mean, all of the swings and roundabouts are set out in the report, but particularly temporary accommodation, a topic we've discussed a lot at these meetings, Susan, was a terrific pressure on us last year. We have now increased the budget. So when the council set the budget in February, it did increase the funding for temporary accommodation. But there really is a crisis out there in terms of homelessness, something which I think as selected members we're very acutely aware of. And that did mean a significant hit. There's also the issue around housing benefit and supported accommodation, which again we've talked about previously in some of these meetings, which is an unwelcome policy quirk, and it would be very good if it could be addressed. A couple of other things to say. On the housing revenue account, we had some one-off income disposals, which was good. There was an underlying challenge around repair costs, and that's something which the report sets out. We hope it will be addressed. We clearly want to be doing fewer things as emergency repairs if we can. We want to plan more. That's going to be an area to watch going forward. I'll say a word about it in the next report as well, because that was an overspend, and last year it was cancelled out. And in practice, we can sometimes capitalise and slip things, but that's not where we want to be really. On the capital programme, inevitably again elements of slippage. My sense is our capital monitoring and planning has got better in recent times. Not everything will always proceed at the pace you intend. Our finance team also expertly are quite deft at estimating likely capital expenditure, which is different to and lower than the full capital programme. So we're not having money at the ready that we then don't need and pay an interest penalty as a result. So those are some of the things I think to highlight. Very happy to take any questions. Nigel may want to raise something else today.
Nigel, anything?
No, I don't, nothing more to add actually. Thanks, Chair.
And Claire?
No, nothing more to add from me. I think Ed's done a very good summary.
Thank you very much. Open to questions and comments then. No? Okay, well, I think it was a pretty good summary. So, yeah, I think you covered, frankly, all the points that we would expect to cover. So thank you very much. In which case, can we please note the financial outturn and performance and agree the carry forward requests in respect to the general fund in accordance with paragraph 6. Is everyone agreed? Thank you very much. We are back to the same group of people for the quarterly integrated performance report Q1 for this year. So Ed, back over to you.
Yeah, sure. So this is the Q1 report. I think Q1 report is useful because it means we can look at trends, we can grip things before they get worse, but I wouldn't focus so much on the bottom line at this stage necessarily. I know Nigel's forecasting on the general fund revenue a 600k overspend, but we'll try and rein that in as best we can. I think there are some interesting things going on underneath the surface. Temporary accommodation we've already talked about, but the corporate property, there's movements between periods of in the financial year. Wouldn't worry too much about that. There are some staffing costs, but again, there'll be an HRA recharge there. Some other movements, nothing major at this stage that I particularly want to flag. I think on the HRA, and officers may want to comment on this, I am rather pleased that we don't seem to be having the same repairs issue that we had last year. I would like to say I'm pleasantly surprised by that, because I think when we spoke with officers about it, the feeling was that was going to be quite a tanker to turn around. Yeah, I mean, there's some of that was systemic and in there, but at the moment that's not showing up. So, you know, that would be nice if that lasted. But otherwise, I'd like to recommend the report for noting.
Thanks very much. Nigel, anything to add?
Yeah, it is now. Yeah, just to come back on the HRA pressure. I mean, we did top the budget up basically and put some more in the budget for this financial year following the overspend situation from last financial year. So whilst it is still early doors basically, as this report is indicating, basically that seems to have brought it under control. But I would stress, as Ed said, basically this is a Q1 report basically, and things may change through the year. But at the moment, so far so good in that particular area.
Yeah, Caroline.
Well, I just wanted to add to that as a result of the situation we had last year, we have identified a number of actions which, as well as decreasing the budget, is enabling us to do exactly what you referred to before, Ed, which is try and shift more to a planned approach. We have quite a significant programme of work going on around that. But I think the other element, which we are very determined to do, is to improve our monitoring and tracking of that throughout the year. So Q1 so far so good, but we will be absolutely keeping a kind of focus on that as we move forward.
Thanks very much. And Claire, did you want to add anything?
No, I think the key points have been addressed there.
Thanks very much. So questions, comments? No? Okay. In which case, I think we could welcome this report. I particularly welcome the updating of the risk register as well. I think so. Some good elements there that we should all be very focused on in terms of trying to address. So can we agree to note the financial position for Q1? Thank you very much. Right, we are now on to item 11 on the agenda, which is Citizen and Community Engagement Policy 2025 Adoption of Plan. I don't see Helen. I don't think she's here. But I see Zhao Zhao and Sally and Nigel. I think over to you.
I think we see Tom as well in relation to this item as well.
Tom here for it. Okay.
Zhao, who is the author of the excellent report you have in front of you. So this is basically about how we engage with communities and citizens. I mean, standing back, you know, a good council does that properly because it wants to understand people's views, their needs and their priorities. And without that, you really can't make good decisions about how you spend your limited resources and what you focus on. It's also at the heart of accountability, I think, that we do that too, so that people have a chance to feed in at the right moment when we develop strategies, policies and particular proposals. I don't think there's anything particularly surprising in the policy approach. I think it's using all the good weapons that you have to engage with groups, particularly hard to reach groups. And in the end, you know, it does come down to the skill by which you use this. I mean, the process itself is important, but it's how you use the information you get, which is the real acid test. And I think genuinely in this council, we do listen, we do amend and change based on what we hear, and that does actually lead to better policies and better proposals and better approaches. The policy includes the following elements, basically the factors that influence citizen and community engagement. This is not a homogeneous city. It's not the same in all places. There are different and distinct needs and communities that need engaging in different ways. We need to be very, very aware of that. The principles are laid out, which is flexibility, proportionality, transparency, clarity, etc., and strengthening the tenant voice. And then there's a sort of a section around the actual practical way in which it's done through information sharing and engagement mechanisms. There's not a sort of national blueprint for this, but there are some good examples that you can go to, including the work of the Cabinet Office and the LGA, the Local Government Association. So that's helped frame this particular piece of work. And it also takes account of the obligations under the Social Housing Act, which are quite significant obligations regarding tenant engagement and the protection of tenants' rights. So that's a new sort of section in this particular policy. As you'd expect, we consult on the consultation, the principles of consultation, and we had a reasonable level of response there, and there was generally a lot of positive reaction to the way we're going about it. However, there's always more to do, getting back to what Scrutiny was talking about accessibility and around trying to make our documentation understandable and easy to read. I think that's quite a challenge sometimes, which I think we're going to have to work even harder at. And the other thing this policy does, it reflects the conversation we had a few months ago on the citizen experience strategy, where the Scrutiny made a number of points around language interpretation where needed in parts of the city, and proactive engagement with children under 12 or young people where relevant. So those points have been incorporated into the policy, which is the right place for them. So I think that's really, Chair, all I really need to say about it. It is sort of self-explanatory, but that's the context in which we're operating.
Thanks very much, Nigel. Tom, Jaja, Sally, anyone want to add anything? No, everyone's shaking their heads. So anyone got any questions or comments? No, this is going to be quite a short meeting, in spite of having a very heavy agenda. So thanks very much, everybody. I mean, to be honest, I think we have had quite a good discussion on it, not least because of the scrutiny recommendations. So thank you very much. That being the case, can we move to approve the citizen and community engagement policy and delegate the relevant authority to publish it? Everyone happy? Fantastic. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Jaja, in particular. I think it's your work here. So thanks very much for that. We are now on to item 12, which is the reprocurement of Housing First Support Service. And I can see various people moving, so that's good. So we have Brendan, Francesca and Ossie, I think. And Richard, yes.
Richard and Ossie.
Yeah, so, right, okay. I'm looking at a piece of paper rather than you, so that was a mistake. So, and Linda, over to you to introduce it.
Yeah, just start out by saying, said this before, but Housing First is an absolutely central plank of strategy for reducing homelessness in the city, particularly street homelessness. It's a strategy that's worked, there's evidence of it working throughout the world, and we're now doing it in Oxford, and we're seeing the results here. There's over 50 individuals that have benefited so far from a Housing First tenancy in Oxford. At the time of the report being written, there were 45 Housing First tenancies active, with another 13 people receiving pre-tenancy support but waiting for a suitable property to move into, which just shows, you know, the demand that's out there. So for those unfamiliar with the concept, Housing First is about divorcing the accommodation from support services. So instead of people typically moving off the streets into a kind of hostile environment of supported accommodation, a Housing First approach involves people being given a home they can call their own, where they can put down roots, and then support being provided additionally, but not linked to the accommodation. And the idea is that as people move on with their lives, that support is eventually able to be withdrawn, and the person is left to enjoy their home in the community. So we currently work with 3 providers, Beam Up, A2 Dominion and St Mungo's, to provide the personalised support for the Housing First residents. It's the contracts with St Mungo's and A2 Dominion which are up for renewal. We do rely on government funding to be able to provide this service, and I think at this point I'll hand over to Richard and Ossie to explain the intricacies of that and how what we're really agreeing this evening is dependent on receiving government funding.
Thanks very much, Linda. Yeah, Richard and Ossie, over to you.
I'll start. So, yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Yes, as an officer working with this on a day-to-day basis, I'd just like to add that this, the Housing First provision in Oxford is crucial, provides a home for the most vulnerable people. I've many times have experienced homelessness and of sleeping throughout most of their lives. So it's very key that we can see this continue. And as Councillor Smith said, 2 of the contracts are coming to an end. In March, they are funded by government funding that we received through bids several years ago. So although we don't have the funding announced yet, we can't wait till that happens, because then that it's too late to procure the services and we'll run out of contracts. So we're essentially doing a preemptive procurement process. We're asking for that so we can start that, and then when we find out more information about what our government funding situation is at, then obviously we'll take the necessary steps in terms of hopefully we will receive sufficient funding and can just award the contracts. But if there's another situation, then we'll have to look at where we can get funding for the service, because it's very key that it continues.
Sorry, I think the only thing I would add is normally the kind of announcements around funding come around the Christmas time. So obviously we can't wait for that. We've only 3 months left on the contract. So we'll kick off the re-procurement now, and we'll hopefully be well into it when we get confirmation of money, and can then hopefully keep these services being provided.
Thank you. Ed.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, it's just a suggestion, really, and I'm sure Linda's across that anyway, but maybe not so much about this funding, but the wider, we've spoken in the past about the wider homelessness funding piece and the challenges that we've got in Oxford. It just occurred to me, post reshuffle, it would be quite good to dust down that work, because there's been a lot of change in that department and amongst ministers. And in fact, I did hear tell that a couple of MPs representing places quite similar to this in terms of the effect of some policy changes, met the new parliamentary private secretary to the department, one ex-councillor, Tom Hayes. So it might be worth just spinning that wheel again. So I hope that's in order. Sorry, Susan, I appreciate it's not just on the Housing First procurement as such,
but helpful, and there has been a bit of a reshuffling of responsibilities, and I think Ali McGovern's got homelessness, so yeah, be worth having a bit of a look at that and making sure we are doing all the lobbying we can on making sure we get the money for this incredibly important work. And yeah, just a really big thank you, because I'm really proud of the work that we're doing on Housing First in the city. I think it's exactly what we should be doing. And I'm really pleased that, you know, Linda's led on this work with you to make sure that it happens, because it's the right thing to do, and I think we've seen the benefits of it. We just need to make sure that we can continue it. So great. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Well, in which case, can we approve the report, which is basically about starting the re-procurement exercise, as we've heard, and delegate authority to complete that as we go through, and we're all going to also massively cross our fingers for funding. So yeah, we can agree that would be great. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you. Great. Okay, we're now on to item 13, which is introduction of temporary accommodation placement policy, and we have Kieran online. Sorry, I can't really see, but yeah, sorry, the screen's so far away.
I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. And Meg, yeah, and it says here Ossie as well, so if you want to come back, you can. And Richard, but over to you first, Linda.
Yeah, so we've already heard this evening about the temporary accommodation pressures that we're facing as an authority. The number of households that we are placing into temporary accommodation is more than doubled in the last few years. This report does go into some of the mitigations that we're taking to try and cope with that demand in terms of expanding the number of units that we have available to place people in. And also working to prevent people being in a situation where they need temporary accommodation in the first place and prevent their homelessness. But unfortunately, we are still needing to place far more people than we would like into temporary accommodation. This policy is really about us being transparent about how we make decisions about placing people into temporary accommodation. So we don't have enough temporary accommodation that we own for everybody that we need to place into temporary accommodation. So far too often we do have to use nightly charge accommodation, budget hotels. And it's important that people understand how decisions are being made about who is placed where, in terms of our stock, private rented sector stock that we have access to, or nightly charge accommodation, particularly when it's unfortunately involves placing people out of area, out of Oxford. So yeah, I hope that this policy does that. It's not something that is really, it's something that we need to do. It's not about an area of work of the council that is really something that we want to be doing. It's something we need to do, unfortunately. And this policy is about making sure that it's done in a fair, transparent and legally compliant way.
Thanks very much, Linda. Anybody want to add anything?
Yeah, I think just to reiterate really what Linda said, I mean, the demand for temporary accommodation in Oxford has increased really significantly in recent years, and the council is under huge pressure to sort of meet that homelessness demand. So we are, we're pleased that we can bring this policy to Cabinet because, it will ensure that temporary accommodation is allocated in a way that's fair, that's transparent. It's going to ensure our decision making is consistent. It will mitigate the risk of legal challenge, and it is going to strengthen the council's ability to meet those statutory obligations while, safeguarding the rights and well-being of its citizens.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we've heard loud and clear. This is not what we want to be doing, but it's what we have to be doing, and I think it is absolutely right that it's done in a transparent and open and fair way. So thank you. Any questions or comments from anyone? No? Okay, in which case, can we move to the recommendations, which are to approve the policy as set out in Appendix 1 and delegate the relevant authority to make minor amendments as required. Everyone happy to agree that?
Agreed.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we are now on to item 14, which is appropriation of land at Underhill Circus. And we have Emma, Dave, don't know if Clive and Aneri, I think I saw Aneri on screen. So yeah. And Clive's there too. Sorry, I really can't see. My eyesight's just not good enough. So apologies. And I think, Dave, there's going to be a change in the recommendations of this report. So if you could talk us through that when we get to it. Linda, over to you.
Yeah, I'll just say I'm really pleased that we've got this report on the agenda, a piece of good news. This is one of those garage sites, this time in Barton. Underused garages, attracting ASB, looking rather unsightly, and I can't think of a better use for the site than building up to 9 affordable homes there. Yeah, that's all I've got to say at the moment.
Dave?
Yeah, not much more to say really. It's part of the Small Sites Programme. You did see the report on this previously in January 24. We brought this one and Leiden Road to Cabinet, and that was to give project approval and the delegations for the scheme, and to commence the appropriation process. So part of that appropriation process is publishing the notice of intent and seeing if we have any objections or representations back. We haven't had any, so that makes the quite a simple analysis really of moving forward with the scheme. So that's the recommendation. As a slight last minute change, we did notice there's a little bit of ambiguity in the recommendations as set out in the agenda. So there's an amend on recommendation 2 and recommendation 3. Predominantly, that's taking out the word recommend and substituting it for approve at recommendation 2. So just to be clear what the intent is there, the intent is that to move the purpose that we're holding the accommodation, the units for within the general fund from a garage purpose into a planning purpose. That's within Cabinet's remit. So it's just rather than recommending that, it's approving that. And the third recommendation is a recommendation from Cabinet to Council to move the units during the construction phase from the general fund into the HRA. So I think there's just a recommendation there to make that even clearer, to confirm that that recommendation follows planning consent is the way it's set out in the wording. The original wording did just give an indication as to the months that we'd expect to do that in. That's probably a bit beyond what we needed to provide, but for information, we're hoping to get planning consent by next summer and then complete by the end of 27. So it'd be in that window that we'd bring a report into council.
Thanks very much. Anyone got any questions or comments? Yes.
Yeah, I had a question and I've now got two, for which apologies. The first question I was going to ask was about thoroughly obviously approve of the principles here. It was just a brief question about the lease arrangements for garages and whether there is any constraint on ending them either here or indeed other places where there might be a small number of garages in use and where making them not in use for that purpose could make them developable. The second question was then hearing the change of the wording of the recommendation, gazing at it probably ineptly, and then going and looking at paragraph 8 and image 1. Are the garages which are within the land which is being transferred, are the garages in the general fund or are they already in the HRA? And does that have any consequences to the wording of the third recommendation? So in other words, is the transfer of the land which is not currently built on only, or is it the garages as well, if the garages are outside the HRA?
Yeah, shall I come back on both of those? The way we rent garages, the general principle on garages is they're rented on a short agreement that can be terminated from either side with a week's notice. Obviously, as a council, if we're trying to move someone out of a garage to develop it, we'd want to be talking to that person, offering alternative garage space, etc. And that's what we're doing on some other sites across the city at the moment in terms of lining them up for development. In this very specific case, it's a little bit unusual in that some of the garages were available to be let in that arrangement, but they were empty and haven't been let to private people for quite some time. But about half of the garages were used by the shopkeepers to the Underhill Circus shops. And in some cases, those garages were within the demise of the lease for the shops. But that legal arrangement, Semma's team, not mine, but that legal arrangement has been terminated now and they've been separated out. So the garages are no longer part of the shop leases, which allows us to bring it forward as a site. So I hope that answers the first part. The general part, the second part is probably implicit in what I've just said about this particular site, but they were all held in the general fund. So it's a changing the purpose, and then as we're building the housing, moving it from general fund to HRA. So yeah.
Just so that everyone's entirely clear about the recommendations, I'm going to read out recommendations 2 and 3. 1 is completely the same, but recommendation 2 should now read, approve the appropriation of the land in the council's ownership at Underhill Circus, brackets, see image 1, brackets, the land, end brackets, to planning purposes. And that's the end of item 2. Then point 3 is subject to obtaining planning consent, recommends to council the appropriation of the land owned by Oxford City Council that forms the development site for housing at Underhill Circus from the general fund, GF, into the housing revenue account, HRA, at the established Red Book valuation figure. So hopefully everyone's clear about what the recommendations are. Is everyone happy to approve them?
Aye.
Thank you, and thanks very much. Right, I think we've got the same personnel for a number of different reports. So we're just going to move swiftly onto acquisition of land at Knights Court into the HRA. Linda.
So there's another report that I'm really pleased we've got on the agenda, a very different site to the last one. This is Knights Court, a former office block near Cowley Centre. The plan at the moment is to use the existing fabric of the building, so not to demolish it, but to use the existing fabric of the building to convert it into residential, which I think is really interesting. And obviously, if that's possible, it's a very environmentally friendly way to develop housing. Be interested to note as well that the proposals at the moment include the use of some units we can use as temporary accommodation to address the pressures that we've already spoken about this evening. So yeah, I think it's a very good use of £8.9 million of HRA capital funding. I'm pleased to commend the report to Cabinet this evening.
Thanks. Thanks very much. I don't seem to have the actual report in front of me, so I don't quite know where the recommendations are. Ah, right, it's on the confidential agenda. Is that right? Ah, okay, right. Okay, that explains it. Right.
Yeah, elements of it should be.
Right. No, I think I'm clearer now. Sorry, it's for reasons that are somewhat obscure. It's being printed on confidential paper, but it's not actually confidential. That's okay. I was slightly worried that I should have moved into confidential session and I haven't, but no, that's all good. Okay, so has anyone got any questions or comments, or do you want to say anything additional? No? Okay, if we can move to the recommendations then. It's to approve the freehold acquisition, to grant project approval to finalise the scheme design, and delegate authority to the Director of Housing to enter into the relevant agreements. Everyone happy with those recommendations?
Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you very much. I think just on that one, if we could continue to try and call it the site on Between Towns Road, that would be helpful, because I think there has been quite a lot of confusion of discussion around this, about what we're talking about, because of the confusion between Knights Court and Knights Road. So yeah, just thought it was worth mentioning that. If we move on to the next report on the agenda, it's acquisition of land at Elsfield Hall into the HRA. Linda.
So this is another empty office block, this time owned by the City Council already, which has potential as development site. We hope that we'll be able, this time the proposals involve demolishing the building and putting new build there. We hope that we'll be able to build at least 30 new homes there, and we do hope that we'll be able to achieve more than that, subject to viability and planning. So another site that I'm pleased that we've got on the agenda this evening as part of our commitment to building affordable homes in Oxford.
Yeah. Anyone wanting to add anything on this one?
Yeah, just to add, there was a comment that came from Labour Group about the density on the scheme. So basically the proposal at the moment for 30 homes as a minimum is based on pretty much a mirroring or replica of what's adjacent, which is a Cannon Court, which is developed by OCHL. Just to say that the target is to deliver more homes on the site than that. But as Linda said, it's subject to that detailed design work, planning, risks, etc.
Thank you. Helpful clarification. Anybody got any additional questions or comments? No? Okay. In which case, can we agree the recommendations, which is to grant project approval to finalise the scheme design, hoping that it's going to have more homes, and delegate authority to the Director of Housing to enter into the relevant contracts. Everyone happy? Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, there was 2 further recommendations as well, but we're agreeing them as well. So thank you. And then item 17 is acquisition of land at Cave Street into the HRA. Linda?
Yep, so another development site that we've got on the agenda this evening, this time a brownfield site, already owned by the City Council. The proposals set out in the reports include plan to build at least 19 homes there. Again, it would be great if we could achieve more than that, and currently proposed to be 100% affordable housing.
Thank you. Anything to add? Nick? Dave?
I can check.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add to this one, and actually it does relate to the previous 2, is we're focusing really heavily on 1 beds at this location and at Knights Court, between Towns Road. Earlsfield is more mixed, but also with quite a number of 1 beds there. So it does directly feed into the reports you've heard earlier, in terms of directly trying to intervene to address the 1 bed need that we're seeing and reduce the sort of the pressure on having people in bed and breakfast and everything that entails. So this is in part a response to that. It will take a while to develop out, but we'd hope it has a direct impact, really.
Thank you. That's really helpful to understand that. And yeah, I mean, obviously, as you say, directly relates to earlier reports on the agenda and indeed some of the conversations that we had with scrutiny as well. So anybody got any further questions or comments? Yes.
Well, it's just a general stand back comment, Chair, for me, that, when you go through these reports, we've been through 4 now, they're making a substantial contribution to meeting our target of 1,600 affordable homes in the next, up to March 29, of which 850 are affordable social rent. And, I don't know this for a fact, but I suspect there are very few councils in the country, when you look at the housing record at the moment, who have set themselves a target and actually look on track to deliver it. And I think we should take some pleasure in that. And I secondly would commend officers, because I obviously, with my OX Place hat on, work closely with Dave and Linda, and you really do scour the city and its surrounding areas for possible sites. And I think we should say a big thank you for that, because actually you're always looking for the 10s and the 15s and the 20s that actually accumulate up to the sort of numbers we're talking about. And I think we should let that go unremarked, because while they're all individual schemes, Chair, they do accumulate to a significant sum, a significant number in the end.
Here, and both Linda and I were visiting sites today with Dave and colleagues, and seeing some of the really good work that's going on in the city, and I think we can be rightly proud of the amount of affordable homes, whether it's for council rent or whether it's shared ownership, that we are building in the city. And it was really good to see that today and be able to show it off to visitors. So thank you for the work. Alex.
I have a question, but I have a horrible feeling it's going to be on the confidential element. I do apologise.
Right. Are you wanting to have it answered before making a decision, or can we move into confidential session at the end of the meeting in order for you to ask it?
I think it should come before the decision.
Okay. Well, in which case, I'm very sorry, but we're going to have to move into confidential session. So that means that I need to move the relevant bits of the Local Government Act in order to do that, and we'll